Hello,
Hello,
everyone.
jamming out to the music backstage.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the June episode of What's New in OTel. I'm Reed, and
Welcome.
my Julia.
Yes. Hello, everyone. We are missing our third member, Adriana. She couldn't make it, so today is just Riz and I. We are really excited to be here, and we'll have two amazing guests in a little bit. We'll bring them all, up. But first, I think we have a lot of news actually, right, Riz?
We do. And also, we would love to see and hear where you're tuning in from. So if you
Mm-hmm.
want to share, oh, hello, where you are listening from, I am coming to you live from Portland, Oregon. And Julia, I
Yeah.
believe you're traveling this week.
Yeah, I'm in New York City. I have an event tomorrow, Platform Con. So yeah, traveling around, and then I'm going to Brazil next week. So yeah, I'm on the road a lot. I think all of us we're always traveling a lot. So, but I'm really excited to be here to make some time for this live stream.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, glad to have you. All right. Hope y'all are ready for a roundup of hotel news from the last 30 days or so. This one is a little bit over 30 days, but it's a really big one. So you've probably seen the announcement, but in case you missed it, OTel is now an official CNCF graduated project.
Woohoo!
That means it's now in the same tier as projects such as Kubernetes and Prometheus, which we're going to hear a lot more about shortly.
Yeah, this is
So
huge.
it
Yeah.
is. And if you're going to be at KubeCon North America later this year, expect some parties. Yeah, so for practitioners, like, what does that mean? So it hopefully should put your mind at ease that OTel is production ready. If you've been waiting for organizational buy-in to standardize on OTel, please use this. Graduation signals long-term stability, sustained investment from a broad contributor base, and a project that is hopefully here to stay for a long, long time. So start instrumenting today.
Yeah, yeah. And congratulations to the whole community, all the maintainers, contributors, everyone that was involved in this. It wasn't an easy effort. Everyone put a lot of work into that. We've been waiting for this graduation. So congratulations to everyone. We also, so the OpenTelemetry project also launched something a while ago, I think a little over a month ago, because I remember we talked about this at KubeCon EU. So they launched something that is called the blueprints. And it's basically an official guidance for how to deploy and operate OpenTelemetry at scale. Because the problem it's solving it's that most teams they adopt OpenTelemetry organically, and they end up with a mess. And the blueprints they give you prescriptive patterns and reference implementations, so you don't have to figure everything from scratch. And this is again a community effort. So if you want to contribute to those patterns or reference implementations, you can go and check it out on GitHub. We're always looking for more contributions around that.
Yes, and the meetings, the SIG meetings are alternating with the end user SIG meetings. So I believe this week will actually be the blueprints meeting if you are interested in checking that out. Um, and for your next piece of news, so we are going to be digging directly into this topic in just a few minutes when we bring on our guests. But this is going to be a useful guide for you to peruse like afterward. So a Prometheus client compatibility guide was just landed in the latest docs release. So if you're operating in a mixed OTel Prometheus environment, like I said, it's going to be a good guide for you. But we are also, this is the exact topic we're going to be getting into in a few minutes. But yeah, so this doc starts to codify the rules of the road for how the two systems interact, which has historically, as with a lot of in organizations as well, been communal knowledge passed around GitHub issues and Slack messages.
Cool. Two more news. So obviously we have to talk about AI in observability, and this one is very interesting. So the Gen AI semantic conventions now standardize how you capture model attributes, token usage, latency, all of that, which is great, right? Like finally we have that. But the thing is that people are starting to realize that OpenTelemetry tells us what happened, but it doesn't really tell us whether it was good. So was the output correct? Was it safe? Was it faithful to the source? That part still needs a completely separate evaluation layer on top of OpenTelemetry. And I think this is actually a real important distinction to understand if you're getting into AI observability. So OpenTelemetry is the infrastructure, and it's not the whole answer. We're going towards that, but there's still some work to do. There is a lot of discussion around that right now in the community. If you want to get involved again, I always tell people get involved into open source, into open telemetry. The Gen AI SIG, so the Gen AI special interest group, is super active. They are very open to contributors and you know to talk about these semantic conventions and how to improve them. So this is a very hot topic at the moment. And another quick update is on the collector. So there's a new version that just came out in June 10th, so 14 days ago, 2 weeks ago. And there are two deprecations on the contrib side that you should know about. So the Kubernetes node detector in the resource detection processor is being deprecated. You have to move to the Kubernetes underscore API instead. And in the Kafka receiver, the group rebalance strategy, the singular mode is being deprecated into in favor of the plural one. So group underscore rebalance underscore strategies. You can read more about it on GitHub. And obviously these are small things, but if you're using the collector, you need to pay attention to that. Otherwise, down the road, you're gonna have some issues. So just some of the news that you should be aware. And now I think that's why we're all here. We want actually to hear from our two guests, right? So we told you a little bit what's been happening in the OTel ecosystem lately, and you probably noticed a theme. You know, a lot comes back to interoperability,
I know
maturity.
it's such a hard word.
Yeah, and what it actually means to run open telemetry at scale in production, which is a perfect sig because we have two guests that are quite early in the people that are building the future. So do you want to introduce them, Reese?
I would be honored. So we've got David Ashpole, who's going to come on. He is a software engineer at Google, OTel technical committee member, maintainer of OTel Go. He co-leads both the OTel interoperability and Prometheus SIGs. So he's a person making spec level calls on exactly what we're talking about today. And our next guest is Arthur Silvasens. He is a staff software engineer at Grafana Labs. He is a Prometheus maintainer. So he's not coming at this from just one side. He lives in both communities. He co-leads the OTel Prometheus SIG, which is where the actual negotiation between the two projects happen. Hello.
Awesome.
Where
Yeah,
you where you guys
yeah.
coming
Go
in?
ahead. Mhm.
Yeah, go first, David.
What was the question? I'm sorry.
Oh, just
Where are
where
you
you
guys coming from? Yeah.
Oh, I currently calling in from a Google office in Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Nice.
Hello, hello. And I'm from my humble home office in Florianopolis, Brazil.
Cool.
have just learned is beautiful and affordable.
Yeah.
Yes,
Mhm.
yeah. David, you know that I was there yesterday because there is a Kubernetes meetup at
Oh my goodness.
the Google office, and I just flew to Boston for the meetup, and then flew to New York in the evening. So I gave a talk about open telemetry, obviously, but too bad we didn't get to see each other. Next time
Amazing.
I'll let you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
please do.
Uh-huh. Cool. So let's start with a warm up question before we get into the weeds. why does OpenTelemetry versus Prometheus interoperability even matter? Why should someone care? Maybe we can start with David, and then Arthur will tell us also why people should care.
Sure. Well, I mean, I think the reality of today is that almost everyone is probably running some mixture of OpenTelemetry instrumented applications and Prometheus exporters and Prometheus instrumented applications in production today. So people have to be able to make sense of that. Sometimes the metrics end up in a Prometheus compatible database or like Prometheus itself, right? And sometimes they go to another vendor. And we're all here, I think, trying just to make sure that there's a coherent story and that those users who have a variety of opinions are well served by the components that we build, and that it's not terribly difficult to make sense of it all.
Yeah,
Arthur,
I think the Prometheus came by a little bit earlier than OpenTelemetry, and when Prometheus got into CNCF, there was not many observability tools in the CNCF toolkit. So Prometheus has like a gigantic adoption, and with OpenTelemetry goal of being like vendor agnostic, Prometheus is not a vendor, but a lot of what Prometheus community did was made to work specifically with Prometheus. But now we want to make all the things that Prometheus did work well in any kind of vendor that uses OTLP. And we need to make this transformation from Prometheus to OTLP in a very good way, so we can adopt like the whole structure of OTLP, like have the resource, have the scopes, and have the metric attributes translated correctly.
Solid. So I believe we'll just kind of ask some questions, and then if you have stuff to add to that, either of you, please do. We can always have this more of like a conversation. But we did want to chat about stabilization. I can talk. What's the last mile before the spec and the Prometheus receiver ship as stable, and what could still derail the timeline?
Ooh, I think I'll take that one if that's all right. But it's actually really close. I think we have one open issue remaining, and it's of course about self-observability. So there's one part of the Prometheus receiver that we'd like better diagnostics with, and right now we're eagerly awaiting some changes to the core collector interfaces to let us report partial success from our receiver. I wouldn't say that that's necessarily blocking. We can always just add our own metric specific to the receiver, but it would be nice if, for example, a partial failure to translate your Prometheus metric payload showed up in the standard collector receiver self-observability metrics instead of somewhere else. So technically that's the last thing blocking us, but we have ways so that if it comes to collector 1.0 and we don't have a solution yet, that we won't end up blocking anything.
I have the impression that it's not only that. I think we cannot stabilize the Prometheus receiver if the Prometheus spec is not stable.
Which, right, I think we are. I was just taking a look at that, and I think I think we're pretty close on the spec. I thought we did we have anything else left?
To stabilize the spec, like there's a lot.
To stabilize the Prometheus to OTel half of the spec.
There is the resource attributes, if I'm not mistaken. And that alone is a lot of discussions.
Mm-hmm. I'm guessing discussions make up the vast majority of your time.
Yes, spec work is mostly making agreements with a bunch of people across a bunch of SIGs and making sure we all agree in something.
Mhm.
And then, okay, and once we all agree, let's commit and let's implement. And yeah, convincing a lot of people takes a lot of time.
I have no
Yeah.
doubt. Actually, I am curious. Well, I'm not going to do a list, but if we have time after it, I might get into that a little bit more. So, dots versus underscores. How did that decision get made? And is there a translation layer for users with existing dashboards and alerts, or do they need to adapt?
Every time I see this topic, makes me want to cry a little bit. But actually, David did an awesome research about 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. We asked a bunch of people their background, if they came from Prometheus background, if they came from OTel background, and what are their preferences. And when analyzing the data, we saw a very clear pattern. People who came from Prometheus and are starting to use OTel, they prefer underscores, they prefer suffixes, they prefer the Prometheus way of doing stuff. People who came from OTel and started to use Prometheus were the complete opposite. They want dots, they don't want suffixes. So in the end, okay, we need a way to support both, and people can choose whatever they want. I don't think there is a very clean way to support both. People need to do all kinds of configuration changes and choose they need to intentionally choose whatever they want. Do you have anything to add, David?
Yeah, I think the most maybe helpful thing for listeners is just that the default we landed on is the Prometheus style default, which is compatible with, say, older Prometheus versions that don't have UTF-8 support, and has been what we've used for the past few years. So it kind of minimizes disruption to users. And that means that if you just do nothing else other than install a Prometheus exporter in your OTel SDK, you'll get underscores and you'll get unit and type suffixes. But we're working to roll out a configuration option called translation strategy. And that's the place where, it is complicated. It's a config knob with lots of options, and few people maybe want to dig into them. But hopefully people who want to keep dots now have a relatively easy way to configure their exporters to not translate dots to underscores and not to add underscores and suffixes if that's what they want. So to bring it all back, I guess the answer is we didn't pick one or the other. We decided as much as possible to give people choice and not to be disruptive unnecessarily, because I think we could have gone back and forth 10 more times over what the default should be. But at a certain point, we just had to pick something and move on.
Yeah, that's good that you don't tell people, oh no, this is the default, this is how you need to do things. I would love to hear people if they can write on chat if they are team dot or team underscore. Also, I see we already have one question. If the people that are watching us have more questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. We'll address them at the end. We'll do a Q&A with our guests. Now let's talk a little bit about entities, because entities is one of the things that they're still unresolved. As I understand it, the issue is that Prometheus identifies everything through labels on metrics. There's no native concept of a host or a service as a first-class object. So OpenTelemetry does have that, but the two models don't map cleanly onto each other, as from what I understand. So what does that gap actually mean in practice? Maybe David, you can answer that. What breaks for end users, and is there a path to solving that?
I think entities, if you actually go and look at the entity data model, right, it's not technically breaking anything for anyone, right? So resource attributes is still a bag of keys and values, and it tells you something about your application. And we have an okay way. I don't think anybody loves target info, but it's at least an okay way that we're working on improving the UX around to make resource attributes easier to consume in Prometheus. I think entities, the big change that they make is they split resource attributes into identifying and descriptive, right? And so it's just another layer of, I'll call it richness, but another layer of detail that comes with resource attributes. And it's not really something that's easy to represent in Prometheus's flat, right, just label-based data model today. So there may be ways we could represent it, or we could invent something new in Prometheus to try and carry it. Entities, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is also meant to be this completely separate signal that you should be able to send. So in some sense, like, there's also an effort to make Prometheus better at handling metadata about targets, metrics, other things. And so it's the challenge there is, I think, trying to come up with the right concept in Prometheus that still makes sense within the world of Prometheus, but that can allow people to represent things that OpenTelemetry has invented to solve its own use cases.
Cool. Yeah, I really like. I know a lot more of the OpenTelemetry world.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm just learning more about Prometheus. This is very interesting. Thank you for sharing that, David. Now maybe we can switch. I'll ask Arthur about the Prometheus receiver. So the receiver is one of the pieces closest to stabilizing, but I think there is some confusion about what it actually does. So Prometheus users are used to a pool-based model where Prometheus reaches out and scrapes metrics directly. The receiver puts the OpenTelemetry collector in the middle of that. So how does that change the mental model, and what teams need to think about around performance and cardinality when they make that shift?
I think the first confusion, I remember myself when I was getting started in OTel. I came from a Prometheus background, and in Prometheus we have something that we call Prometheus exporter. It's something that collects metrics and exposes the metrics in a /metrics endpoint. An exporter in the OTel side is something completely different. That you already have the data collected and you are pushing it to somewhere else. So when you are getting started with a Prometheus receiver, you need to switch this nomenclature. I need to understand that the Prometheus receiver is like a Prometheus server. Like it goes to the Prometheus exporter. It collects, so it switches the orders. First, you have a Prometheus exporter, and you use the Prometheus receiver to collect the data, and then you have another exporter again, but then in the OTel side that pushes the data. I can think of a Prometheus receiver something similar to a Prometheus federated, where you use one Prometheus to collect metrics, and then you have another Prometheus collecting the metrics from the previous Prometheus. We can switch the federated Prometheus to a collector. So you can, I'm not sure if I'm helping or making things worse, but like that's the way I'm thinking.
No, it works. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, cardinality doesn't change. The amount of metrics that you're collecting stays the same. What changes is you are doing a pull to collect metrics, and then if you're pushing a TLP, then you're using push. With push, you don't have some things that the Prometheus land are very proud of, something that we call up metric. So if you're using push, you don't know if your application is down or if it's just not sending metrics for a while. But in the other hand, and it's as a trade-off, you don't have push, but then you have much more control on how this data is sent to the backend. You have retry mechanisms if the backend is not available. You can fine-tune the batches. There's a lot of things that you can do in push that you cannot do in pull. But I feel like in pull, there's a lot more guarantees about when an application is down or up. Whenever I talk about push and pull, I feel like people need a PhD to understand all of this. But I hope I didn't make things worse.
No, I think that was great. I'm someone who always needs like time to process information.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Oh, go ahead.
If I can add one thing, actually, I think maybe the most interesting part of the Prometheus receiver is that most of the Prometheus code base, all the scraping, all of the service discovery stuff, is actually completely reused. So if you are used to running a Prometheus server and you're like, oh no, I don't want to switch to this entirely new thing, like actually most of the code in the Prometheus receiver is reused. So instead of going to a TSDB, it just goes right into a collector pipeline. And so that's kind of the mental model that people should have for what the Prometheus receiver does. It's a Prometheus server that writes into a collector pipeline instead of into a database.
Yeah.
Thank you. And actually, David, this one is for you as well. So for a Prometheus native team who's considering OpenTelemetry, bridge, migration path, or permanent coexistence?
What was the last word?
Bridge, migration path, or permanent coexistence?
Ooh. Bridge meaning like a client-side bridge? Yeah, I think there's pros and cons to all of them. I think one thing that Arthur brought up is the up metric. And so if you're already running with a Prometheus setup, chances are that you are alerting on that. And that you, if you just switched straight from that to a bridge, that you would be missing something that you were relying on in production, right? So, I would say start small. If you're trying to switch, I would probably, if you're trying to switch to from a Prometheus that you're managing to a backend that accepts OTLP instead, I think the bridge is a good solution. But I've come to definitely like using the collector's Prometheus receiver and then pushing OTLP from the collector as well, because it keeps the up metric and other things that you previously had, but still gives you the ability to push OTLP for the last mile. So I think there are definitely trade-offs. The bridge is very efficient, is one of the things that I think it has in its favor. It does the translation client side, and so there's a lot less. It's just taking the in-memory version of it, converting it, and there's very little like aggregation across batches or things like that has to happen. It's actually quite a bit simpler client side, but I do think that there's advantages to using the Prometheus receiver as well to keep backwards compatibility with some of the scrape logic that you already have.
Being very realistic, I doubt people will have an easy time migrating from Prometheus exporters to collector receivers. Like there's naming conventions changes, there are performance changes, and I think ORSIG is finding good ways to let people keep using the Prometheus stuff, but have all the richness from the OTLP at the same time. So I wouldn't say migration is like a mandatory thing. Like you can still use Prometheus stuff and have all the OTLP benefits. So I would say it's a mixture of bridge and permanent coexistence.
Thank you.
I would definitely agree. I think the goal is definitely more to be able to add OpenTelemetry things successfully rather than replace things that you're already using that work well.
Yes, awesome. Now, what do you think people, users that are using Prometheus or OpenTelemetry, what do you think they get wrong about this interoperability work that you see in the community also? Anything that's worth sharing?
Let's see. I have a few things in mind.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really sure how much it's related to interoperability though. But let's say out loud and see where this goes. So Prometheus, as we talked before, it's like has a flat label hierarchy for attributes, and OTLP has scopes and resource attributes, and we also have the semantic conventions that are totally different. I think a lot of vendors are building solutions on top of the OTel semantic conventions. I know one vendor that built solutions on top of Prometheus as well, but like I feel like most are doing it on top of OTel. Now, if you're just using the Prometheus receiver and exporting OTLP, you do not get OTel semantic conventions. But it's possible to transform the metrics inside the collector pipeline to comply to semantic conventions. You can use transform processors. You can use resource detector processor. You can use group by attributes processor. And all of this can be used. So let's say, for example, you have a Postgres exporter and you're using Prometheus receiver using like some very complex that I would love to abstract away from the user, but today you need to write the configuration. You get OTLP with the right resource attributes, with the right scope, with the right metric attributes, and following the OTel semantic conventions. I feel like this is super hard to get right, but it's definitely possible. It's something that maybe in the future we could work to make it easier to the end user. If David doesn't have anything else, I have another idea. So
go for it. Yeah.
Go for it.
Users of collectors really love OTel collector contrib because of how easy it is. Like it's a massive binary with thousands. I'm exaggerating, but let's say hundreds of components. And I think this makes the binary size a lot bigger than necessary. It makes it wastes network, wastes a lot of things. It increases costs and all around, and increases your supply chain attack. Like you can, since you have more dependencies, you can be attacked in different ways. And I feel like you could, you could definitely use OCB to build your own distribution of the collector, remove all the components you don't need. And something that very few people know, the Prometheus code, which Prometheus receiver reuses, can also be made smaller with a certain Go tags. Or you can remove service discoveries from the Prometheus code base. Like if you're not using AWS service discovery, for example, you can just remove this code with a build tag. You can make your collector binary size smaller. You can remove some paths of attacks. I rarely see anybody doing that.
Oh, that's so interesting. I didn't know about that. What's it called?
That's very cool. It's in Go. You can pass tags to Go, and depending on which tags you pass, the code is compiled differently. Or you can use OCB to pass the right tags. So Prometheus is compiled without the service discoveries.
Cool.
It's actually been a great pattern. I happen to be a code owner for the resource detection processor, and we've gotten similar requests where people, don't want to compile in some large cloud client library or something, and so we're probably going to go down a similar route there. I've finally come up with my answer to the question of where do people go wrong, and I think most of the time where people tend to go wrong with Prometheus and OpenTelemetry compatibility related things is that they do too much translation. I've I remember reading a Slack thread, I think maybe a few weeks ago, of someone who kind of gave up on the whole thing, but wanted to incorporate OpenTelemetry components and Prometheus components together. If I recall correctly, they were, they had an application that was successfully instrumented with Prometheus, and they were still going to be using a Prometheus server at the end of the day. But they were trying really hard to adopt OpenTelemetry in the middle, as a way to, and there are definitely some benefits that can come with that, right? Like, I love writing OTTL transforms as much as the next person, but at the end of the day, I think simplicity is actually, going to win out for a lot of users, and it may not even make sense for everyone to throw a collector in between their application and their Prometheus server if that's the setup that they have. So I think that's maybe the place where a lot of people, everyone's excited to adopt OpenTelemetry, and for good reason. But sometimes, sticking with what's simple is actually the right thing for a lot of people.
Keep it simple.
Yep.
And where do you see this work between Prometheus and OTel, like down the road in like 2 years, let's say?
Spicy one. You want to go first? Or should I?
I'll go first. Sure. I think in 2 years, I hope that it's not a big topic of conversation anymore. I think that solving a lot of the core data mapping problems and coming up with the right configuration surface for users to be able to interact and to make choices about how the two systems work together is kind of what we've been doing, and we're hopefully close to landing. And there's going to be a lot of new features that OpenTelemetry adds, and we'll have to figure out how those integrate with Prometheus, and vice versa. There's going to be hopefully many new things that Prometheus adds that we'll figure out how OpenTelemetry is going to interoperate with, right? So hopefully in 2 years, it's a small trickle of interesting problems that are kind of smaller in nature, but maybe less. Hopefully, at least there's a lot less churn for the average user in 2 years.
For me, I would love to see the two communities getting closer, even closer. I think we made huge progress in the last 3 or 4 years or so. But like there is a lot of duplicated efforts between two communities. Like for example, the Prometheus community built all those hundreds of exporters, and now the OpenTelemetry community is rebuilding most of them as a collector receiver, and we have duplicate code base that basically does the same thing. Like we could probably find ways to join those two, make the Prometheus and OTel community share more code instead of duplicating. What else? And I would love to see, for example, OTel came with the entities project as a way to identify things that emit telemetry. And Prometheus is mostly catching up. Like we have proposals on how to support this, but like entities has been around for years until we finally realize, okay, we need a plan. I would love if in, I don't know, 2-3 years, we start projects together instead of one reacting to the other one. Yeah, stuff like this.
Arthur, about that, I'm curious, how do the two communities coordinate everything? Because as you said, there is a lot of duplicate work, etc. Is there a formal process, or how do they reach consensus? Do you have regular meetings, and then you share the works between the two projects? Because it sounds very confusing and a lot of work for both projects. How do they coordinate and talk between each other?
I think I don't know how to, like, there's definitely there's a phrase for this in English, but I cannot remember. But I see different people working separately. The maintainers of Prometheus were not maintainers in OTel. Maintainers in OTel were not maintainers in Prometheus. They all had different goals and different times, and they were just doing whatever they had to do to be successful. As time passes, like David and I, for example, we are now maintainers on both community, and we are working on getting more people, like people from Prometheus to work in OTel, people from OTel to work in Prometheus. And as long as we have this shared maintainership, I think it's just going to be natural that we start to do things together. We just need to get out of our bubbles and try to collaborate more.
I agree. Because at the end of the day, it's all open source and it's going to help everyone, right? It's not just, oh, this is my project, I'm only going to work on this. But it's a slow process, probably, to doing that, I'm sure.
Yes, it takes time.
We appreciate
it does. Should we go check out the Q&A, the questions that people have asked in the chat?
Yeah, we do have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So, yeah, let's get into the first one. What is the biggest corporate challenge you or we all face to help enable OTel and Prometheus interoperability?
I guess the target info and joins.
I'm trying to parse the question, actually. What do you think is meant by corporate challenge?
If you ask this question, if you can help us clarify. Sometimes I will ask a question hoping someone understands.
Yeah.
If
we can go to the next one and then we'll come back to this one.
Yes. If you can help us clarify what that means. But Julia, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, so curious question on the Prometheus pool-based paradigm. Does the OTel target allocator fully bridge the concern already, or are there challenges ahead? That's another...
Do you want me to take this, Arthur? I think...
If you can, yeah.
Yeah, I think I can. I think the target allocator, it's quite cool. It's come a long way. It was originally like an intern project, I think, from someone at AWS. And, since it was first conceived, I think most people maybe listening are probably familiar with the Prometheus operator. And that uses the hashmod operator to kind of try and shard targets between different Prometheus servers that are all running and trying to scrape a group of metrics. To say, and just so everyone knows, like there are thousands of users who are successfully using the Prometheus operator in production today. It's been around a long time. It's super popular. So in a sense, like maybe the pull-based paradigm was already solved before OpenTelemetry came along. But I think the target allocator is a meaningful improvement on that that strategy. There are definitely, like, for example, when you scale up or scale down the number of Prometheus servers that's scraping something, you can end up like getting something double scraped. And so something like the target allocator, which basically instead of you having 6 Prometheus servers who all look at each target and go, I'll hash this, am I number 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, right? In order to agree on who's scraping what, like you instead add in the central coordinator, which is the target allocator, that decides, oh yeah, this collector over here is going to be responsible for this target and this one over there. And I think there are some wins that you get by doing that for the cost of some added complexity. So it's to say it's solved, it's still a challenge. Sharding targets is still a challenge. I don't remember the latest. I believe it's able to do things like make sure that the really large targets, like if you're running a cube state metrics or something, don't all go to the same collector. But like you can be a little bit more intelligent when you're using a third kind of centralized coordinator there. And I know that a lot of companies are successfully running target allocator in production and using it to balance their Prometheus exporters. It's pretty cool. I'm a fan of it now that it's stabilized and they've worked out the kinks over the last, must be 3 or 4 years.
I have a question about target allocator. Does it work outside of Kubernetes, or it depends on the Kubernetes API?
Oh, I think it, from what I remember of the design, which is not a ton, I believe it works anywhere. So like it basically, if you think about your Prometheus service discovery configuration, if you just were to copy that and then paste it into something else, into the target allocator, it's going to come up with a set of targets that it's supposed to be watching. And then it exposes an HTTP endpoint that all the individual Prometheus or all the individual actual collectors can use to query their targets. So it basically just delegates doing the service discovery to a third party and then makes the actual collectors kind of like dumb. So if you wanted to use like the DigitalOcean Prometheus service discovery and use that and then point a bunch of collectors at it, there wouldn't be any problems, I don't think, with the thing working properly.
Interesting. I thought it was only Kubernetes.
I will say,
cool.
I bet almost everyone is using Kubernetes because it's managed by the OTel operator, right? So you just kind of get it like for free and pretty simple and managed, right, with an operator. Instead of if you're doing your own thing, then I assume it's a lot more work and there's probably some gotchas that you have to work through. Yeah.
Nice. I'm also learning in the podcast.
Yeah.
Cool. I don't think we heard back on what was meant by corporate challenge. So I'm not 100%.
I'll give my interpretation of the question then.
Excellent.
We'll go for it. So when I first heard the question, what came to my mind is, why does Google let you work on this? And you know, I'm not sure if people listening will like know the companies and what stuff they align with and whatever, but like a lot of the Prometheus work group right now is folks from Grafana, right? Because Grafana has been contributing to Prometheus for forever and very much have been a big backer of that community for a long time. And you know, thank you Grafana for that. And Prometheus, and from my side, like I get to work on Prometheus and OpenTelemetry interoperability because Google, in many ways, relies on both of the technologies and wants them to work well together to support our customer-facing monitoring offerings, right? So we encourage our customers to use PromQL to query their metrics. We have a pretty awesome managed Prometheus product. I'm not going to sell anyone on anything, right? But just to explain, like, you know, why am I able to work on it? What's the challenge? Like, who ends up being able to give their time to a project like this, where I get to work on something that I think is genuinely useful for a lot of users who don't pay Google any money, right? And so I think, like, just finding, for me, it's like this project aligns well with what Google wants, which is we want one open standard for metric instrumentation. And I think that's like a big part of the hurdle of like the corporate side of things is just like making sure that like it aligns well, I guess, with what's good for the open source and what's good for Google, from my point of view.
Thank you. Very well put.
I don't have anything to add. That was perfect.
Oh,
yeah. David, Arthur, this has been fantastic. If people want to follow your work or get involved in the SIGs, or if they have questions, where should they go?
Well, everything in OTel is organized in a Git repository called OpenTelemetry/community. And there you'll find our meeting notes, you'll find the link to join our SIG calls. They are all public and they are all open to everybody. And we actually enjoy having new people there because that means we can have more hands. We have ton of work and the amount of people helping is always scarce. So if you want to just go there and listen, that's also fine. You don't need to work. But I feel like once people join regularly, they want to help eventually. Like, go there, listen, try to get up to date with what we're doing. Eventually, we'll find something that you're able to help, and we always appreciate the help.
Yep. We know there are lots of you users out there, and we would love your involvement as well, not just the Googles and whoever and Grafanas of the world.
Yeah, don't be shy. Join the Slack channels. Just go say hi. Say that you're new there and you want to help out. People are very welcoming. That's how I started. And I didn't even start contributing to code. It was mostly documentation. So even if you're not that technical, there is a place for you to contribute, and it's so good to be part of this community. I love it. They're always looking for more contributors, definitely. So this is amazing. I learned a lot today. I'm really glad to have you both here, talking about Prometheus and OpenTelemetry. I think now we can wrap up already. We have a few short announcements. So there is PromCom. Arthur, you were mentioning before we started the live PromCom. Can you tell us quickly what PromCom is?
Yeah, PromCom is the Prometheus conference. We have it happens every year, usually in Germany. I think all of them were in Germany. Usually in Munich, sometimes in Berlin. It's where all the Prometheus maintainers, most of them, go. We have 2 days of talks and meeting people. We don't have the chance to meet people that easy. But if you are active in the Prometheus community or you're not active but want to know everybody who works in Prometheus, usually we are all there. We also have one day after PromCon, we have an in-person meeting where the Prometheus team decides the future of Prometheus in the next year. And it's, even if you don't have anything to say, it's always a fun way to know how open source project is organized. I remember going there for the first time and I learned a lot, and I'm here until today.
Sounds good. And so CF keys are open for PromCon right now?
Yeah, for 20 more days, I believe. All topics around Prometheus are welcome.
And speaking of CFPs, Observability Summit EU is also open right now. I'm just a little bit jealous because there's so much cool stuff happening in Europe. But yes, this one is broader, so OpenTelemetry, more general observability related topics. Definitely please check that out. And then I believe Julia.
Yeah, also for those that are in New York City, on Friday, we're hosting an OTel night. So it's going to be at the New York Times, very close to the subway. And if you're interested in learning more about observability, OpenTelemetry, we'll have engineers from the New York Times sharing how they use OpenTelemetry, in their stack, and also 2 engineers from Bloomberg. So it's going to be a very cool event. It starts at 6 p.m. at the New York Times. Feel free to join us. Would love to see you there.
And that's it. Once again, thank you so much, David and Arthur, and of course, Julia, Adriana, we missed you. We will see you next time. Remember, you can catch us every last Wednesday of the month.
Yes, thank you everyone.
Thank you for hosting us.
Yeah, thank you
Bye
so much.
bye.